They called it a town hall, but nobody was allowed to ask questions. On March 14, 2019, the CEO of Harwick Solutions walked to the front of a glass-walled boardroom and told 400 employees the same thing. The company was bleeding. Revenue had collapsed. Costs had spiraled. There was simply no other way. Layoffs were not a choice, he said. They were a necessity. His name was Daniel Harwick. He had run the company for 11 years. His salary that year was $14.2 million. That morning, 340 people lost their jobs before 10 a.m. Among them was a woman named Sandra Kowalski. Sandra had worked at Harwick Solutions for 9 years. She managed logistics for the company's Eastern distribution network. She had never missed a performance review, never received a warning. Her last evaluation, dated 6 weeks earlier, called her work exceptional. She got 12 minutes' notice. A security guard stood 2 feet away while she packed her personal belongings into a box. She was walked to the elevator. Her badge was deactivated before the doors closed. She drove home. She sat in her car in the driveway for 40 minutes. She didn't go inside. Sandra was 51 years old. She had a mortgage. She had a daughter finishing her second year of college. That afternoon, Daniel Harwick sent a company-wide email. He said the decision had been painful. He said the company had no choice. He said he was proud of every person who had given their time to Harwick Solutions. That email was later printed, time-stamped, filed. Sandra kept it. She didn't know why. She just did. The same week, Daniel Harwick was photographed boarding a private charter flight to his second home in Aspen. The trip was billed to the company as a strategic planning retreat. The company reported that trip as a business expense. Sandra's severance was 9 weeks' pay, 340 families, 9 weeks, and a CEO who said there was no money. But there was something Sandra had kept from her time in the logistics department. Something she had printed because she thought she might need it for a budget meeting that never happened. A single spreadsheet, printed on plain white paper, 4 pages long. She had no idea what it contained. She had no idea it would change everything. The spreadsheet was 4 pages long. Sandra had never read past the first one. The answer was on page 3. The first month, Sandra applied to 62 jobs. She heard back from 4. 2 were interviews. 1 was a scam. 1 told her she was overqualified. The mortgage payment was $2,100 a month. Her severance was running out. She filed for unemployment. The state approved $487 a week. She did not tell her daughter how bad it had become. Meanwhile, Harwick Solutions was doing something unexpected. 6 weeks after the layoffs, the company announced a new executive leadership team, 3 new vice presidents, each with a compensation package starting at $800,000 per year. The press release called it strategic reinvestment. Sandra read it on her phone in a parking lot. She called an employment attorney. The attorney listened. He said wrongful termination cases were hard to prove. He said without evidence of financial misrepresentation, there was nothing to pursue. He said she needed a document that said one thing while the company said another. She didn't have that. Or so she thought. She asked Harwick's HR department for her full employment file. They sent a PDF, 23 pages, her reviews, her contracts, a performance improvement plan she had never seen. Dated 4 months before her termination, filed retroactively. She had never been told about a performance improvement plan. She had never signed one. She had never been given one. But now it existed, backdated, filed in her record, creating a paper trail that made her firing look performance-based, not financial. They were rewriting her story. Sandra called the attorney back. He said a backdated PIP was serious, but difficult to prove without corroborating records from inside the company. She needed something internal. Something that showed the truth about the company's finances. Something that directly contradicted Daniel Harwick's claim that the layoffs were unavoidable. That night, Sandra sat at her kitchen table and went through every piece of paper she had brought home from her 9 years at Harwick Solutions. Most of it was nothing. Lunch schedules, policy updates, internal memos about parking permits. And then she got to the bottom of a manila folder she hadn't opened in 2 years. The folder had been sitting in her closet for 22 months. She had almost thrown it away twice. Inside was a document she had printed for a budget meeting that was canceled. It had 4 columns. The 4th column was labeled net profit. It was 4 pages, printed on standard white office paper, slightly yellowed at the corners. A Harwick Solutions header at the top, navy blue on white. The date on page 1, October 9th, 2018. 5 months before the layoffs. Sandra almost put it back. She almost put it back. She started reading from the top. It was a quarterly financial summary. Internal, not published, not public, not the version that appeared in the annual report shareholders received. This was the real one. Column A, revenue by division. Column B, operating costs. Column C, gross margin. Column D, net profit. Sandra was not a financial analyst, but she could read numbers. She turned to page 2. Q3 2018, revenue, $847 million. Net profit, $203 million. She turned to page 3. Q4 2018, revenue, $901 million. Net profit, $241 million. She sat back. She picked up her phone and opened the company's official press release from March 2019, the one Daniel Harwick had issued the morning of the layoffs. She read his exact words. The company has faced sustained financial pressure across all divisions. Revenue performance has fallen significantly below projections. We have no alternative but to make these painful reductions. No alternative. Sustained financial pressure. Revenue significantly below projections. She looked back at page 3. Q4 2018. Net profit, $241 million. She looked at page 4. Q1 2019. Projected net profit, $267 million. The quarter the layoffs happened. The company had projected a profit of $267 million for the exact quarter they told. 340 employees, there was no money. Sandra's hands were shaking. She read it again, and again, and once more. She photographed every page with her phone. She emailed the photos to herself. She put the original pages in a clear plastic sleeve and placed it at the back of her filing cabinet, behind her tax returns. She had kept this document for a budget meeting that was canceled. She had never known what it said. She had almost thrown it away twice, and it was about to become the most important piece of paper in a federal lawsuit. Sandra's attorney had said she needed one document. That said the opposite of what the company claimed. She had it, but the company's legal team was about to argue the spreadsheet was a draft, a projection, an error. They would say it meant nothing. They were wrong. And there was a reason they were wrong, buried in the document's own metadata. Sandra didn't call one attorney. She called 3. The first 2 said the same thing. Hard case, long timeline, no guarantee. The third was different. Her name was Patricia Reeves. She had spent 14 years as a litigator in employment law. Before that, she had worked in corporate finance. She knew what financial statements looked like. She knew what they were supposed to look like. And she knew what it meant when the internal version and the public version said 2 very different things. She read the spreadsheet in 20 minutes. Then she picked up the phone and called a forensic accountant named Dr. Marcus Webb. Dr. Webb had testified in 11 federal cases. He had consulted for the SEC. He charged $475 an hour. Patricia told Sandra she would front the cost. Dr. Webb arrived on a Tuesday. He sat at Patricia's conference table for 6 hours. He compared the internal spreadsheet. Sandra had kept to the financial disclosures. Harwick Solutions had filed publicly for the same period. The public filings showed a company under pressure. Revenue below expectations. Margins compressed. Costs elevated. The internal spreadsheet showed something else entirely. Q3 2018. Internal net profit, $203 million. Publicly reported operating income, $61 million. The difference, $142 million, unaccounted for in any public document. Q4 2018, internal net profit, $241 million. Publicly reported operating income, $74 million. Difference, $167 million. Dr. Webb called Patricia that evening. His exact words, documented in a letter later submitted to the court, were, "This is not an accounting discrepancy. This is a parallel set of books." He found 3 things that sealed it. First, the internal spreadsheet contained a file creation, timestamp embedded in the document properties. Created October 9th, 2018, last modified October 22nd, 2018, never altered after that date. It was not a draft. It was not a projection. It was a finalized internal record. Second, the same spreadsheet format, same column headers, Same internal reference numbers appeared in 3 other documents. Harwick Solutions had filed in a 2016 internal audit, documents that had since become part of the public record in an unrelated tax dispute. Third, Daniel Harwick's signature appeared on the cover memo attached to the Q4 report, the one showing $241 million in net profit. He had signed it. He had seen it. He had read it 5 months before standing in front of 340 employees and saying there was no alternative. Patricia Reeves filed the lawsuit on a Friday afternoon. She named Daniel Harwick personally. The filing was 74 pages long. The spreadsheet was Exhibit A. Harwick's legal team received the 74-page filing on a Monday morning. By Wednesday, they had filed a motion to have the spreadsheet declared inadmissible. Their argument was technical, but they had made one mistake. A mistake that Patricia Reeves had been waiting for them to make. Harwick's legal team tried 4 separate motions to block the spreadsheet from the case. The first argued it was obtained improperly, denied. Sandra had printed it herself from a company shared drive during her employment. It was her document as much as anyone's. The second argued it was a preliminary draft, denied. Dr. Webb's metadata analysis had already established the file creation and modification dates, and the consistent formatting matched verified internal Harwick documents from 2016. The third argued it was protected by attorney-client privilege, denied. It was a financial record, not a legal communication. The fourth tried to argue that Sandra had fabricated it. That one backfired spectacularly, because when Harwick's own legal team submitted their counter-documentation to prove the spreadsheet was fake, they accidentally included the original server log showing the file had been accessed 31 times between October and January by 14 different Harwick executives, including Daniel Harwick himself. He had opened it 6 times. The deposition was scheduled for a Thursday in November 2021. Daniel Harwick arrived with 4 attorneys. Patricia Reeves arrived with Sandra and the spreadsheet. Patricia placed the spreadsheet on the table in front of Daniel Harwick at 9:07 a.m. She asked him if he recognized it. He said he did not. She reminded him under oath that server logs showed he had opened the document 6 times between October 9th and November 3rd, 2018. He said he reviewed many documents. She showed him page 4, the Q1 2019 projection, $267 million net profit. She asked him if, having reviewed this document, he had stood in front of 340 employees on March 14, 2019, and told them the company had no alternative. He said the projections were uncertain. She showed him his signature on the Q4 cover memo. She asked him if that signature was his. He conferred with counsel for 4 minutes. He said yes. She asked him if he had read the document before signing it. He conferred with counsel for 7 minutes. He said he could not recall. Patricia Reeves set down the paper. She looked at him across the table. She said, "Mr. Harwick, you signed a document showing $241 million in quarterly net profit. 5 months later, you terminated 340 employees and told them there was no money. I am asking you under oath to reconcile those 2 facts." The room was silent for 11 seconds. His lead attorney said, "We will take a break." The deposition broke at 9:44 a.m. It did not resume that day. The deposition did not resume that day. It didn't resume that week. When it finally did, Daniel Harwick's attorneys had made a decision. A decision that meant one thing. They knew they couldn't win. And Sandra was about to find out exactly how much they were willing to pay to make this disappear. The settlement offer arrived on a Monday morning, January 17, 2022. Sandra was eating breakfast when Patricia called. She said they want to settle. The offer was $4.3 million for Sandra alone, separate from the class action lawsuit that had since been filed on behalf of all 340 employees. That case would ultimately settle for $47 million, paid by Harwick Solutions and its holding company. Daniel Harwick resigned from his position as CEO in February 2022. The resignation was described publicly as voluntary. His severance package was not disclosed. In March 2022, the Securities and Exchange Commission opened a formal investigation into Harwick Solutions' financial disclosures. The parallel set of books documented by Dr. Webb The gap between internal profit, figures and public filings raised questions that went beyond employment law. In September 2023, Harwick Solutions agreed to pay $38 million in civil penalties to the SEC. They did not admit wrongdoing. They rarely do. Daniel Harwick was banned from serving as an officer or director of any public company for 7 years. Sandra paid off her mortgage. Her daughter finished college. Sandra went back to work and not in logistics. She became a paralegal, specializing in employment law. She now helps people who have kept paperwork they don't understand and don't know matters. She keeps the original spreadsheet in a clear plastic sleeve in her filing cabinet, still behind her tax returns, right where she put it that night. She was asked in an interview if she had felt powerful in that deposition room when Patricia placed the spreadsheet on the table in front of Daniel Harwick. She said no. She said she had felt like herself for the first time in 2 years. That spreadsheet was printed for a budget meeting that never happened. It sat in a manila folder for 22 months. It survived 2 near disposals and 1 house move. It was 4 pages, plain white paper, slightly yellowed at the corners. And it cost a CEO his career, a company $85 million, and 340 people their dignity back. Keep your paperwork. Every page, every email, every receipt, every number. You don't always know what you have until you need it. This case is closed. But Harwick Solutions is not the only company where internal records told one story and public filings told another. Next week, the receipt that brought down a hospital network.